This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Welcome back to Inside the Paint. Rolling on second segment of the show. We got the Heat taking on the Golden State Warriors tonight, coming off that loss to Philadelphia on Monday. This has been kind of a different show. It's like I feel like we're doom and gloom today.
No, it's funny. It's funny coming back from that break. I'm wondering if Eric Spoelstra is calling 1-800-ALARM-ME right now. And again, they won the homestand. They went 5-2 on the previous homestand. They went out to Philadelphia. But you know what, Clay? This is good for this reason. We should have high expectations of this team.
Yes.
Just like we should have high expectations of the Panthers. Maybe even free agency, higher expectations of the Dolphins. Just like we have high, rightfully, expectations of the Hurricanes basketball team now. When a team shows they have possibilities, you should expect more from them. That's what was so disappointing on Monday night in Philadelphia at Wells Fargo Center. The faith was there in the Heat. I mentioned this when I asked my post-game questions the other day. After the game against Oklahoma City, when they had no one available, they had nothing to play for, and all it was about the lottery, my story at the Sun Sentinel was this. The Heat took a business-like approach to a business-like moment. They moved aside past the Thunder, gave themselves 2 days off, then they went to Philadelphia, where they should have taken a business-like approach, but they didn't. And that makes you worry, because when a team is when they have it going for them, when they know who they are, like we've seen with the Panthers, you should take care of business in the business games. Look, I'm not guaranteeing this Saturday when they play the Nets on the second night of a back-to-back, and Kyrie Irving is eligible, and Kevin Durant will be here, and it'll be the big Goran Dragic comeback game. That'll be emotional. That'll be important. If the Heat lose, the sky won't be falling. But there are other moments when you should take care of business. Monday in Philadelphia. Tonight against the Steph Curry-less Warriors. Next Tuesday against the Sacramento Kings. Friday against the Knicks. We saw them fall apart last night against the Hawks. And if you don't take care of business in the business moments, are you in the right business?
And I think somebody, Greater Good, brought this up, and it's a great point in the chat. He said this is Jimmy Butler's team, and that motivation is going to go as far as Jimmy Butler's motivation. And look, maybe on Monday night it is as simple as, and look, he played well on Monday night. It's
very well.
He did what you want him to do, especially given what's going on with the ankle. You mentioned this, that he was limping noticeably heading into the post-game news conference. So maybe it's an issue where it's like he's giving all that he can physically in that game. But once again, Ira, it's can you find that internal switch when it comes to these regular season games and find a way to take that business-like approach? Can you find that inside of you to get to the finish line when it comes to this one seed and then finally recalibrate? And that's where I'm starting to wonder with this team. Is it just something internal that these regular season games are? You can't afford to do that right now. You have to find a way to get to that finish line and get that one seed. And it is Jimmy Butler's team. And, we can sit here and talk about the other veterans and are they breaking out? Ultimately, it's going to come down to this team is going to go as far as Jimmy Butler can carry you. And we saw him try to do it against Milwaukee last year. He couldn't do it.
We saw him do it what he said before that series, Clay, when he said, I'm ready to turn it on. This is my time. LeBron, DEFCON 1, this is go time and all that. Jimmy was very cocky and almost arrogant going into that Bucks series. And then he was humbled and, dare I say, even humiliated. It seems like he's taking the same approach again. It seems like he's saying, don't worry. We got this. We'll take care of this. And it honestly seems, even though the Heat are number 1 now, instead of being number 6 last season going into the playoffs, it's almost setting up the same way. Can Jimmy Butler flip that switch again? Here's my whole point on the Heat team. The elite teams in the East all have their alphas. We know that Joel Embiid is the alpha player. Giannis Antetokounmpo is the alpha player. Maybe Zach LaVine, you could say, with Chicago. We certainly know Jason Tatum with the ever-rising right now Boston Celtics. Is Jimmy more just of a beta? Did the Heat not have that elite guy? End of game, one possession, who gets the ball? On 8 of 9 or 8 of 10 East play-in teams or playoff teams, we know who that guy is going to be, starting with Kevin Durant. With the Heat, it's a little bit different. And they play this equal opportunity approach, which is fine for the regular season. But at the moment of truth, can Jimmy Butler get back to 2020 Jimmy Butler, or was that the one-off?
Get into a comment here from Josh who says one bad loss and the Heat are suddenly crap. It's not
Not
that.
crap. Just diminished what we thought they were.
Right,
Briefly,
and
maybe.
it's kind of trying to, do we have to recalibrate with this team? Do we have to and look, get the 1 seed? That's all I care about. My biggest problem with what happened on Monday night is that this is a game that we've seen before, and it's, if it is the thing that costs you that 1 seed, then I'm going to have a real problem with that. And look, you still got plenty of time to try to fix that. All right, next topic that we're going to get to, and this kind of leads into the where does this team stand? Is it time for a lineup shakeup with this team? Is it time to revisit that starting lineup and taking potentially Duncan Robinson out of that lineup, maybe plugging someone else in? Is it time to kind of hit that panic button, that break in case of emergency? Coach Ira, what would you do? Would you shake up the starting lineup?
It all depends who that player is. I do not agree with anyone out there, and I know a lot of people have said this, whether it's our Slomin's Home Security Inside the Paint chat room or elsewhere, about Tyler Hero. I just don't feel he would get the touches in the starting lineup that have made him so effective. They play a lot of iso ball for Tyler in the second unit, and that's fine, because you're not taking the ball out of Kyle Lowry's hands or Jimmy Butler's hands or Bam Adebayo's hands. You're taking it out of the hands of second unit players. I have no issue with that. I don't think Tyler would be Tyler Hero on this team, the Tyler Hero we've seen this season, if he's starting. Now, you might say, if Victor Oladipo, and we keep coming back to that name, Clay, if he was right, would he fit in there? You wouldn't have the spacing necessarily, because Victor is not a three-point shooter, but you'd have a dynamic two-way player. Maybe he's a possibility. Maybe Caleb Martin for more defense, so you can't go with Duncan Robinson and get those early fouls. I still am of the thought of this. You start Duncan Robinson, you maybe play him token minutes, but ultimately you're able to work to who you want to get to also. I'm not caught up in the starting lineup. I'm caught up in the closing lineup. I'm caught up with, is there a player they're going to attack incessantly at the end? Look, as bad as it was, Tyrese Maxey getting Tyler Hero one-on-one off the pick and roll on switches. What the hell happens if Kevin Durant gets Duncan Robinson off switches, or Tyler Hero, or for that matter, if Kyrie Irving gets Tyler Hero off of switches? So to me, the focus is on the closing lineup. And I've mentioned this, and I wrote it this Sun Sentinel. You can go with a great defensive closing lineup. You can go with Bam and PJ Tucker and Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry and either Victor Oladipo or Caleb Martin. And then I asked those players, but will you have enough offense? And their thought is, as much as Tyler did during the regular season, it's not like Kyle can't score or Jimmy can't score or Bam can't score or Vic can't score, that they would. So my question really is, more than the starters, will Erik Spoelstra alter his closing lineup at a time when you also don't want to hurt, Tyler Hero's confidence? That's why Monday's fourth quarter is interesting. That's why, like I said in our first segment here today, is I think you will go back and look to see if he sets up Tyler Hero one more time in a sink or swim moment, then he has his pre-playoff read.
I know this show is too boring when we agree, but unfortunately, that's where I'm going to go with this. I don't care about the starting lineup. I really don't. I just think it's so meaningless in the grand scheme of what's going to win and lose you ball games. Look, if you got to start Duncan Robinson, because if he's red hot, he hits 4 threes in the first quarter, then you start to gain a little bit of an edge that's going to give you a boost.
But Clay, let's take it the other way. Let's take it away where you do have to make a stand here. Stand your ground, for God's sakes, Clay. And this. Let's say we decide we're going to bench Duncan Robinson collectively. Yumi and Big O, we get together in a huddle and we decided. So let me ask you this. You decide, got to shake it up. Typical Erik Spoelstra. Kendrick Nunn starts all season, doesn't start in the playoffs. Of what remains, so Duncan's out of the picture. We'll injure Duncan. Sorry, Duncan, you just got injured. Clay, who were you starting instead of? So in other words, let's give people the option of at least hearing the alternatives. Clay, if Duncan Robinson is not available to start, who would you start in this place?
Caleb Martin.
See, that's interesting. Now you're creating dynamic radio performance art right there, because that's interesting. Caleb's been shooting the three ball very well, just not in the volume. I don't know if he creates the spacing. He then allows players like Jimmy and Kyle to rest defensively because he's taking on your prime defensive assignment. So that does get interesting. That does present another option. So let me ask you this then, since you've gone out on the ledge right now. Again, people, you can also get Clay at Local 10 there, complain there. Since you have changed the Heat starting lineup, do you think Erik Spoelstra would ever dare experiment during these final 10 games and go, hey, let's see how that looks? Or do you think that would totally shatter Duncan Robinson's confidence?
I don't think he would experiment in the regular season because I think, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, that's not how he normally does things. He goes into the lab during that break between the
Yes.
last regular season game and game one of the playoffs, and he kind of like unleashes something. So I think that would be when you would potentially do it. But then you're basically saying that you don't have a place for Duncan Robinson anymore if you're going to do that, because the way the lineups are situated, and this
I
goes
agree.
back to your original point about why you don't start Tyler Hero. You don't want Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson on the floor at the same time for any sort of extended period. So, like, I mean, if you thought things were bad in the fourth quarter the other night with Hero on the floor and Tyrese Maxey going at him, what happens if you've got a unit out there where you've staggered it to where you've got minutes with Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson on the
Right.
floor together for an extended stretch, and you're going up against Milwaukee and Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday are
Yes.
alternating who they're going to attack. So I put Duncan Robinson out there with the starting lineup because I think that's the place where he fits. He creates the spacing on offense. You can try to hide him for stretches at the beginning of the game. And look, if he's out there and he's on fire, then he gets you a bit of a cushion. So it's the closing lineup that matters to me. I don't mess with the starting lineup, but if I do, and if I'm finding somebody to put out there in place of Duncan Robinson, it's not Tyler Hero, because you're not throwing another ball dominant player out there with Jimmy Butler, with Bam Adebayo, with Kyle Lowry. It's somebody like a Caleb Martin who takes the pressure off defensively, and he gives you enough spacing. Not what you're looking for with Duncan, but he gives you enough to where those guys can operate offensively.
Start. And then just to your point, when you pointed out that Duncan doesn't play, so let's say you're starting a lineup of, just for argument's sake, Bam and PJ Tucker, Caleb Martin, Jimmy Butler, and Kyle Lowry. You know Tyler's going to be your sixth man. You know some type of big is going to come in next, whether it's small ball with Markieff Morris, big ball, you go get some big team with Dwayne Dedmon. You're probably going to try to get Victor Oladipo somewhere in your playoff rotation. So let's say he's your eighth man. So all of a sudden, when it's time for that ninth man, and you're correct, Clay, you might go to Max Strus instead. You might have Kyle Lowry in all foul trouble where you have to go with a Gabe Vincent instead. And you're right. If you don't start Duncan, you might be shuffling him completely out of the rotation. And that might be a little bit too rash also. Or you might just say, hey, we're playing to win now. We'll worry about Bruce feelings. We'll worry about big contracts and everything else later down the road. So I think it's interesting. I just posted a story at sunsentinel.com. Eric Spoelstra talking about this. And he said, we have a unique game with Duncan Robinson that we don't play with any other player. Mm-hmm. And that if Duncan is not starting there, they never get to that game. And it could be a winning game in the playoffs also, which is why I think he said on that. But like you said, because of previous playoffs, I never assume anything when it comes to Eric Spoelstra and playoff lineups.
And there's a comment in the chat from Shane that kind of gets back to what we were talking about in the last segment. You need an alpha in the playoffs, and Jimmy Butler's got to be that guy. And so we can sit here and we can like come up with, if you plug player X in for player Y, you can do it. I mean, who are we talking about who's going to win come playoff time in the NBA? You're talking about Kevin Durant. You're talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo. You're talking about Chris Paul, assuming he comes back healthy, and Devin Booker. You're talking about Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. You need stars, and you need your stars to be stars. You need your alphas to be alphas come playoff time. And so you want to get to that finish line, but to cross the finish line, you're going to need your dudes to be dudes.
But you know what? What
if
the dude is Tyler Hero? And I'll give you an example. Kyrie Irving is a bad to awful defender. I think you'd agree with that?
Yes.
He had his moments in that one series against Golden State when he made his playoff stand defensively, as did Kevin Love at one point. What if Tyler Hero is that dude? And what if at the end of a close game against Milwaukee in the second round of the playoffs, they do clear the floor for Tyler and they say, as great a defender as Drew Holiday is, we think you got this. And the difference now is, with the added muscle mass that Tyler has added, with him getting to the foul line, which never happened before, he now has the option of hitting the pull-up jumper, but of also getting his way to the line, stopping the clock, and shooting free throws. Maybe this is that moment. Maybe that transformation is coming. Maybe just like the Nets are going to go with Kyrie, even though he's not a defender, because at the end of the day, he gets you buckets. Maybe Tyler Hero does become that player. And then as Jimmy ages, he becomes a more of a two-way type of supporting player. So you have that push-pull there of who your closer is going to be. Clay, in recent closing moments, Jimmy has deferred to Tyler Hero. And Tyler Hero has been that closer, sometimes to a point of almost too much. So I am curious, can Tyler translate this into the playoffs?
I don't think it is too bad. Offensively, Jimmy Butler is not your closer. I haven't seen it enough, man. I've seen it go the opposite way too much. And, I think it was the game in Charlotte a few weeks ago where he settles for the three-pointer, the outside shot.
Yes.
And look, you see this with a lot of elite players, right? They have spots on the floor, and you'll always see they create a little bit of space, and then it's a hop.
Get to the spot.
Jason Tatum does it all the time. Kevin Durant does it all the time. You have Chris Middleton. Guys have spots. They create a little bit of space. They hop to it, and it's their shot. Jimmy Butler has spots, but he misses. He misses a lot. It's from three-point range.
Unless he's attacking and getting to the foul line like he did in 2020 when he was the picture of exhaustion. But
that's it.
Does he still have that in the tank, Clay Ferraro?
That's what we have to see from him. And what I see too much in the regular season from him is trying to get to the spot and then missing the shot. His spot is putting his head down like a bull and getting to the free throw line. That's his spot. That's what we saw, to your point, in the NBA Finals a couple of years ago. And by the way, that's what we saw in Game 1 of the Bucks series last year. Time winding down, he didn't try to get to a spot. He attacked the basket. Deep down, I think he knows that that's his spot. We're just not seeing it in the regular season. And the question is, can that switch be flipped in time for the playoffs? But Ira, I'm with you, man. Who has the deepest bag on this Heat team? It's Tyler Hero. And so offensively down the stretch, I'm okay with him being your guy if Jimmy Butler's okay with him being your guy, and if you can hide him enough defensively. And this gets back to what we were concerned about at the top, and we got to see come playoff time, can you hide him enough defensively, or can he overcome the deficiencies defensively in order to make sure that you maximize him on the offensive end of the floor? So we're going to talk more about that, but I also want to talk about this upcoming schedule. Does Coach Ira think that this team has enough to get to the finish line in the 1 seed? That a lot more coming up right here on Inside the Paint.